Now I'm, yeah, that sounds okay. Like I'm 20-year hedge layer, I'm an AO 20 qualified. Just a little bit of stats about the hedgerows. We have 300,000 kilometres of hedgerow in Ireland. And in perspective, that means that if you stood on the east coast of America and you walked to the west, you'd have to do it 32 times to cover the same amount of kilometres as we have hedgerows in Ireland. So the hedgerows are vast, absolutely vast. Now, unfortunately, at present, they were surveyed a few different counties over whatever, a couple of years ago anyway, and only 20% of our hedgerows is in satisfactory order. So it's a poor enough picture as to what's going on with hedgerows. So this is where I come in the Hedge Lane Association of Ireland. We are trying to train up young people to simply be able to know the way properly to lay a hedge and maintenance of the hedgerow. Now that's one, it's a statistic that's still, and things are not improving, right? We're going backwards really. Most of the 70 to 80% of the, as shown here, of we'll say the birds that depend on the hedgerow for shelter, feed, nest sites, protection. That's mainly what happens with the hedgerow. And also the mammals, very, very important for mammals, badgers, voles, mice, rats. The hedgerow is also used as a mapping device by our bats. Bats are very, 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 very important mammal in our Irish environment. This is the food web here. This is really the biodiversity. This is the biodiversity poster or whatever. Everything is interlinked. Everything is interlinked. One, the berries to robins, everything in a circle eats and is eaten. The barn owl in the centre, the bats, all the wildlife. And this is an example of our, what I picked last night out of our local hedge, rowanberry. This is gilder rose, bramble, dog rose. This is holly. This is spindle here. Crabapple. We have 2 crabapples here for jelly making. That's naturally in our hedgerows. And our main 2 here is whitethorn and blackthorn. These you can eat, except the seed in the inside of it. I only found out that at the ploughing match. An old man from Wexford came up and he kept eating these, and he kept taking out the seed. And I said to him, you shouldn't be really eating them. He said, I'm eating them. He says, I'll come back in a half an hour and I won't be dead. So they are very edible, very, very high in vitamin C, and they're actually very, very good for you. And blackthorn here with the sloe on it is another major feeder of the birds in the hedgerow as well. Just going through, that's another kind of a poster of what's in our hedgerows. There's ample amount of every kind of plant and animal that supports our wildlife. This is in the food web as well. This is part of our biodiversity. So that is, now as I go along, guys, anybody that wants to ask a question, I need to be able to react with you guys. Ask me questions, what you need to know, and what you want to find out. I'll do my best to tell you. Now, the reason I have to go back to the stage of explaining what hedge laying is. So a stem, like the stem here, now it's semi-cut at the bottom, it's laid over, you create a hinge, the bark is not upset, the cambium layer on the inside is not detached. The stem that's laid over is alive, and you have vertical growth out of it. So that is the way hedge laying is done. That's the only way hedge laying is done. It brings growth to the base of the hedge. That is the most important, and that's what's known as rejuvenation of a hedgerow. That's about it. I'd have to bring you to a hedge to show the procedure, but roughly what it is going in with an axe or a hook 12 to 18 inches tall, making a hinge down along one side of it, bending it over, and just keep paring the hinge until the stem is laid, and it has to be laid at an angle. The sap rises in the stem. Now we're on the west of the Shannon, so any hedge laying that will be done from here towards Galway, anybody with sheep, the first stem that's laid down is laid tight to the ground. The next one is laid over it, and you finish with a hedge at, we'll say, less than 1 metre tall. Okay, that's mainly for sheep. Up in Wicklow, up in Kildare, the hedge stems would be stopped that height. So the horses and whatever cattle wouldn't jump across them. Very same procedure. You have vertical growth out of each piece that's laid over, and that's what hedge laying is about. Different styles. We have just our own Irish style by making the hinge at the bottom, the same as what I'm after explaining, and the stem is just laid over. Different styles of how you keep your brash to one side, and the vertical growth out of is they do the very, very same thing. You know, it's the same idea. Now, what else have I to? That's really it. Now, anybody else? Can anybody identify what hedge laying is? Did anybody ever see it going on? Now, I don't want to address anybody that, you know, any farmer that comes in with a digger and breaks down the hedgerow and it ticks the box with the department. That is not hedge laying. Nobody has identified that. No. Well, that's good. We're on a positive. That is not hedge laying. You know, although I have to be very critical of the department because, you know, any farmer, I've seen loads of farmers doing this, and I've got 2 machines myself, but it's absolutely, it's mortal sin now to be doing that to a hedgerow. It's mortal sin because, number one, the heels is not cut off. When you bend over your hedgerow, you're tidying it up, it looks good, but the breakage on the bottom is prone to letting down the water down into the plant, and in a few years the hedgerow is dead. But it ticks the box, the department don't know any different. So we're trying to promote the proper way of hedge laying. And having said that, it's hard work, but it must be done properly. So that's the... Can
I ask you, sorry?
Yes.
The current practice now in a lot of roadside hedge management is these machines with these big blades that go along.
Correct.
And they mangle the trees.
Yeah.
And does that cause infection?
Does
that damage the trees?
Yeah.
Because we've lost so many local crabapple trees in our hedgerows that people used to forage and were great for the wildlife and biodiversity. But they're gone now.
Yeah.
This year I went to find them and I couldn't find any.
Yeah.
All I saw was mangled trees.
Yeah, absolutely true. The flail it should be banned. If I was the department minister, I'd ban it straight away. There's plenty of other ways of cutting a hedge without using a flail. A flail is not, it shouldn't be regarded as cutting a hedge, it's butchering a hedge. Yes. Because if you have a stem, now I've seen, we got a lot of calls here last year. There was a hedge outside of Mullingar, a beech hedge, maybe about 20 years of age, and it was flailed and 2 foot off the ground. And it was flailed in such a way that it was broken to the ground.
Yes.
Now you're exposing all the stems to rot and disease. And eventually, now you will get a little bit of reshoots out of it. It might survive for another year, but mainly the rot, when it gets down, it goes down to the roots. Do you know, and it's really brutality.
How can we stop that? How can we stop that?
Well, I don't know. You see, it's another problem with our department. Nobody identifies the right thing.
No, but what the response that you get when you speak to local people about it, they'll come back with you. health and safety.
Yeah, that is true.
We're
Yeah.
responsible
Yeah.
for making sure that there's no overhang
Yeah.
and there's no this.
Yeah.
But it's like a radical mastectomy. It's just everything gets annihilated.
That is true. That is absolutely true. But it's not good. It can be. I've got a machine. It's the old style finger bar hedge cutter, and it's made in Slane. Slane track make them. You can attach it to a tractor or a mini digger, and it puts a clean cut into your hedge. You can cut up to 40 mil with it. Lovely clean cut. You can take it up or down, and it leaves the cut that you have. It's a coppice, like a coppice cut, and regrowth is from that cut again. The plant is safe. Yeah. You know, it's out there. Only it won't be implemented. You know, that is the problem.
Is that finger bar, is that vertical as well?
You can do, well, when you're on a mini digger, it'll do both. You can cut flat. It comes with a cradle head that fits your mini digger. So you can actually adjust it and cut it on the inside of electric fence as well. You can go over and back along. Brilliant machine. Absolutely. So it's.
Eamonn, is fire blight disease still a major threat to hedge laying?
Yes.
Could you give us what's the latest on that?
I don't know. To be honest with you, I don't know. It's only on. It's at research at the minute. It's out there. It's out there. Absolutely. Yeah. I couldn't give a definitive answer on it, you know, but it is. Now, just another problem we have found. You know, the same as this lady was saying here about the, health and safety and visual. When you come out your gate, you can't see up or down. There is an aspect to it. But the major thing with that is people come around with a budget, a sprayer and a spray Roundup. And they go up in the hedge, down onto the bank, and you have 4, whatever amount of meters killed outright altogether. Yeah. Like instead of simply trimming it or just cutting back, with the hedge clippers, neatly cutting it, that you can look up and down. It's not impossible to do, Yeah. So that's another major problem.
I just want to ask you, what kind of education, if any, are local authorities looking for, or do they look for? Do they come to you to find out anything of the information you've just given us?
No, unfortunately, very little.
I live in Kerry, and that's what I'm finding too when I inquire. And do you know if it's incorporated into engineering training at this point?
No, it's not.
Still isn't?
No, it is not. It is not. And the problem we find as well is it's not taught in schools. It's not taught in. I'm trying to take out the TYs out of our local and fifth class. It should be taught in ag science, and it should be taught also in when you do your green cert. It should be taught.
The little ones are doing it.
The little ones are doing it. Yeah. As I was telling to Maeve there, when I take out 5th and 6th class out of national school, it's an enjoyable day. These guys are willing to learn and willing to look at everything that's incorporated with the hedgerow.
When it comes to the engineering department,
they don't want to know. They don't want to know. And there's such a now we get on well with birdwatch. We have and all the groups, but the hedgerow is it's the only place wildlife can go anymore. If anybody, we do always say, where did you see such and such an animal? It ran into the hedge. It was sitting on the hedge. It was breeding in the hedge. Everything is to do with the hedgerow. There's no other place for them. We had a class down in Longford here back a while ago there, and lovely hedge, replanted hedge, and there was we discovered we lay at about maybe 40 or 50 meters. We discovered that there was no bird's nest in it. And I thought, God, this is unusual. But our friend, she's a biologist, said there's nothing for the birds to eat. Around 50 acres around was ryegrass. That was mentioned before here. This is the biodiversity. This is why everything is so much linked together. Everything is linked together. And if you stop one thing, if you stop the feed, you lose the insects, you lose everything down along the line from it. It's a rather, look at it, it's a sad state of affairs, So That's unfortunately the way it is, you know. But we're trying to, and just sorry, I just.
The laws are there. They're not implemented, you know.
They're not. No, they're not. They're not. You know. And look, at you can, if you legally, you know, to cut a hedge out of the season is from the 1st of September to the last day in February. But if you notify your council that you can't see around the corner, you can cut away. Now, if you have a guy with a hedge cutter on, he's going to do as far down as he can and as far up as he can. You know, so it's.
Yeah, it doesn't stop them in taking them out. The law might be there that says
Yeah.
they can't cut them.
Yeah, you're right.
Between March and August.
Yeah, that is true.
But it does not stop them going in and taking out
You're right.
chunks
Yeah.
of hedgerows.
Yeah.
I see that all the time.
Yeah, yeah. Now another major problem. Well, it's not a problem. Well, it is. Everything is a problem, I suppose. But we came across a farm. Everybody spoke about this from Tipperary. Not a horticulture. A guy that breeds horses bought 200 acres of land, and he took out something like 1.5 miles of hedgerow. Literally took it out. He left one 200-acre farm with a roadway down the middle. Okay. Now the compensation he paid, he doesn't draw his single farm payment. He's scot-free. The timber burnt. Your man told me that the timber, to harvest some of the timber, it burnt for nearly 3 weeks. He got off scot-free. There was miles. He said literally miles of mature hedgerow in it. You know. But that's the way it is. That's the, like, it should be outlawed. You should not, you know.
I think Niall Hatch from Birdwatch Ireland is looking at setting up a campaign
Yes.
to get the public involved, to stand up and vote with their feet and
Yeah.
demand a
Yeah.
stop
Yeah.
to the destruction of
Yeah,
hedgerows.
that is true. That is true. And we come across as well problems that, you know, you can only hedge lay. Now, I didn't bring in the tools. You can only hedge lay with an axe, a billhook, or a hand hook. You put the cut into the stem with those two only. Now, you might have to use a chainsaw if slightly bigger, but that is the procedure. That's the way it was done 200 years ago. Like, this goes back to the, you know, the identification of hedge laying. Napoleon, when he crossed through France in the 18th, early 17th century, wondered why his horsemen couldn't get through the hedges. It was slowing them up. And when they went back to document it, the hedges were laid. Now that's too, they can't do it now. You know, the hedge laying is not out there at the minute. You know, it's rather sad. It's backwards we're going. It's really backwards we're going. You know, and the hedgerow is so important for all the things that I'm showing you there. That's a very, what I took those out of there now is a very, very important hedge. Ella McSweeney, I done an item on ear to the ground with Ella McSweeney. She took an axe in her hand and she laid 3 stems. Anybody can hedge lay, you know. Now, a positive thing, out of all that we trained up last year, just under 50% were women and young girls, you know, so it's good, you know. But the procedure of hedge laying is the same as it was, you know, 2 to 3, even the 12th century. I looked it up here the other night. There was notification of hedge laying in the 12th century, you know, so it's...
Okay, sorry, we have a question over here, and then yourself, and then there was a question over here as well.
Yeah.
And yourself. Can I ask if you have a question to raise your hand and we'll get a mic to you? Because if you don't use the mic, the people watching can't hear. So, you know, we might be able to hear each other, but that's it. Oh, here you are.
Yeah, thank you. So it's maybe more of a comment than a question, if that's okay, please. So if a farmer takes out a hedgerow, I think he has to replace a hedgerow.
Correct.
But I'm sure you well know, if a hedgerow has been in place for 200 years or longer, it has such an association of biodiversity with it, from fungi to lichens to birds. And it also links maybe to my second point, which is a local hedgerow in Tipperary or in Westmeath or wherever is not just local, but it has a global connection, because you're going to have in April, you're going to have the willow warbler, the chiffchaff and the blackcap flying in from Mediterranean or Africa, And from now on, when the weather gets a bit colder, you're going to have the cousins of the thrushes, the redwing and the fieldfare coming in from Scandinavia.
Yeah.
So I think, as you said, if we can educate the county council officials and the students about the local and the global.
Yeah, that is true. And just going back to the point about like the berries that's on those hedgerows at the minute, if I flail that, all them berries are turned into the ground. They're of no use to anything. You know, I know it's not possible to cut every hedge at the end of the season, but there should be a majority of hedgerows left that the birds can eat the berries, forage off them, take shelter in the leaves, take shelter in whatever foliage is left, and then cut them towards the end of the season. You know, there's a way around all these things. You know, there is a way around them. You know, so now Maeve.
Thanks, Eamonn. Eamonn, I was going to ask you, like, your own background. Did you learn it growing up, or did you come to it, like, did you learn it from books, and the people in the association now, what would be the tradition of learning it also with them?
Well, my background is I saw my father hedge laying when I was quite small. You know, you see, the problem today is, well, the problem, I keep calling it a problem, it was the fact of hedge laying was an art that if cattle broke out, if my cattle broke out into your field and there was a gap in the hedge, you just went and you laid a stem down into it. That there was no stakes, you couldn't buy thorny wire, you know, you couldn't get cheap wire. So you had to maintain your hedgerows as a field boundary and as a stock-proof boundary. So you had to be able to hedge lay. Everybody hedge laid. It was a thing like milking a cow. Everybody back 20 years ago could milk a cow. Nobody could milk a cow. I have a young lad that works, that milks 100 cows there. He's 15 years of age, you know, and press the buttons. That's all he understands. If you put a bucket under a cow that he milks, he wouldn't know what to do with him. You know, and it's the very, very same with hedge laying. There's no, you know, it's an old art, but it's a dead art now at the minute. Nobody wants to do it. Nobody wants to take an axe in their hands and a pair of heavy gloves and lay. But that was the reason. It was a practical thing to do. It was a necessity. You had to be able to hedge lay. Otherwise, your stock were gone everywhere, gone onto the roads. So that's why it has changed in that respect, you know. But we'll have to change it back, you know, before all our hedgerows are gone. And we have the most unique, I suppose the most unique in Europe at the minute, or the most unique in the world with all the amount of hedgerows that we have. Now, maybe not in great condition, but, you know, we're still holding on to them or whatever, you know. So this is why we're, you know, trying to run these courses and get, you know, the word out that this is still going on or whatever, you know. So it's in that way. It's hopefully we have to look on the positive side of it as well, you know. So,
Eamonn, thank you so much. I suppose one of the issues is that for a contractor to cut a hedge, a kilometre of hedge is upwards of €40, and to flail a hedge is upwards of €70 a kilometre. So that's the driver.
It is.
And someone's making that decision to pay that, you know, that's policy.
Yeah.
So that can be changed.
Yes.
And needs to be changed back to wrap around with your work and Heritage Council's efforts to bring back traditional ways of doing things.
Yeah. That is absolutely true. You see, it's the price. It's the price of, you know, you put all. Now, having said that, there is one kind of positive thing to that is most of the guys that when the 1st of February comes, they take the hedge cutters off because it's, you know, it's gone out. And generally with a phone, like you can hear a flailing going on miles away, and also a saw head on the end of either a tractor or a digger. So it's a disincentive that they have to put this stuff back on to cut that, you know, cut that metre a hedge row or whatever, you know. So that is, but you see, it's the price again. Like we have a minimum price of €15 a metre now to lay a standard hedge. We'll say a hedge that was planted 12 years ago. Like, you know, €40, €40 to €60 per metre he'll cut from here to the bridge in Athlone. you know, so like with like, you know, we're way down the pecking order in that way, you know. But it should be changed. It will have to be changed or whatever, you know. So it's.
Hi, Eamonn, and thanks. It's good listening to you. I think a lot of the problem too. This is more of an observation rather than a question. Is the fact that in a lot of these scenarios, you just talked about a stud farm owner that removed all the hedgerow. In a lot of the cases, it's not actually the owner or the farmer that's doing it. It's a contractor. So I think what we need to do, and what should be done urgently, is that some of these contractors need to be pulled in, because a lad who's driving a machine for a living, it's up to him to educate himself that whether it's drainage of a protected area, or digging in a bog, or a callows, or hedge, as you say, destruction, they know what they're doing is wrong, or somebody, you know, cutting down trees during a nesting season that's a tree surgeon. They know what they're doing is wrong, but they are not been prosecuted for it either.
No,
and I think that's a huge problem. Whereas if a
major
machine driver's pulled in and said,
Yeah.
you shouldn't have dredged that river at that time, or you shouldn't have took out that hedge, and implement a fine on them. And their association, I mean, the local authorities know who the lads are that are cutting the hedges,
Absolutely
because they have them on their books.
Yeah, that is true. And there was an incident there lately about the law going to be changed, that if, you know, that the hedge lane should be extended, you know, at the end of February, maybe the end of March. But every contractor in my locality were cutting on into that again. And they turn around and say, you know, I didn't know. Sure, isn't that the law? The dates was changed. It wasn't changed. It was proposed to be changed, but it wasn't changed. And any excuse to do, it's not so much the wrong thing, but just to carry on as normal, you know. And that's a major, and you're right, that's a very, very valid point, that everybody, the laws should be out there for everybody to look up and know, and, you know, proper procedure to prosecute them or whatever, you know. So it's look, I don't know, I have to be positive a bit as well, otherwise I wouldn't keep going or whatever, you know. But we have to, it's the identifying of what is, you know, how important our hedgerows are, and how they should be maintained, and how they should be looked after, you know. So it's a difficult one, you know.
Can you give me your thoughts on this, please? I live in Wicklow. We have about 100 metres of along the side of the road, and it's all gorse.
Oh yeah.
Now, it's a fire hazard.
Right.
And I'm wondering how it can be improved. Is it valid as a hedge for wildlife?
Yeah.
And how can it be improved and made less of a fire hazard?
Yes. Gorse can be laid. Gorse can be laid. Brilliant hedgerow. Absolutely brilliant hedgerow. It's like talking about having thorns on the blackthorn and whitethorn. Your gorse is up with the best of them. So it can be laid. It can be got into a very, very manageable, nice hedgerow. I wouldn't see that as a problem at all. I've been asked that question here, even in the new acre scheme. The new acre scheme it's going to be, the application forms are out in January. The people start to go into it. And that was asked here the other day, you know, could gorse be identified as a hedge to be laid? And yes, it can.
What height would it go? Would you get it to?
You could let it grow on. It doesn't make any difference. See, the idea of the hedge laying is bring the rejuvenation and the regrowth to the base of the hedge. So we advise that if you're going to propose to lay a hedge, let it get very, very tall, because that height, the height of that ceiling there, when I put a cut into the base of that and I bring it over, that means I'm keeping that length, but I'm putting it down to whatever height you want to finish it, and it's still growing. You know, and the same with the gorse. If you keep that high, you can take the two sides of it off, because it'll have to be taken off to lay anyway. You have to get into the base of the stem to put the cut in to lay it over, and it'll regrow.
There's no way of lessening the possibility of gorse fire. This is at the edge of the road.
Yes, I understand. Yeah, I know that is the problem. And when it gets really dry in the summertime of the year, it's very flammable. It's very flammable kind of stuff, you know. It is, absolutely, yeah. So It's a problem. Sure, look at this fine years has gone by. It's a problem with all hedgerows, and grass that has grew back or whatever, But
birds use gorse.
oh yes, birds will nest in it. Brilliant nesting site. See, when you bring over, we have found this as well. When your stem is standing up straight, every nest that we photograph in the hedgerow, we know everything that's in the hedgerow. Like I'm taking down a stem the height of the ceiling. When I lay that down to 30 degrees or 10 degrees, everything, I can identify everything that's in it. Every bit of fungi, every bit of growth, everything that's on it, I can identify it because it's visual. And we notice now that this is where the birds are building. You've got a horizontal site, vertical, horizontal site, straight away it's your foundation. It's a foundation for the nest for the bird. So it's a major nest site, a laid hedge. So but the gorse is no problem to lay at all. Now it's hard stuff to handle, all right, but look at they're all the same, they're all the same. What part of the country are you in? Wicklow. Oh yes, yeah, you would. Yeah, no problem in that way. And it'll go into an acre scheme as well. It's part of the new acre scheme as well. So that's the. Now, any other? Yes, this.
There are a few questions. Can I suggest that you talk us through hedge laying with that 1 minute video to illustrate it?
Yes, perfect, Catherine. Yes,
that would be great. Because I know myself.
I'll just answer that lady's question there.
Oh, sure. And you had a question as well. I'll get back to you as well.
Just one quick question or observation. Would you comment, please, on what I see as a huge taking out of hedgerows and trees by the local authorities?
Yes.
And in the supposed interest of safety. Yeah. And again, as I see it, is creating highways for speeds and potential increase in death and fatal injury.
Yeah, well, that is true.
That's as a personal level. But, what's happening there, or what's the position in relating to the county councils or environmental officers or whoever else are involved? It's enormous. You go to travel the road one day and everything is intact. A day or two later, it's closed off. Travel that road again and everything's gone. Yeah. The eyes pop out of my head sometimes.
I know, that is true. Yeah, that is true.
So
now,
any way of communicating?
Yeah, well, legally, you can't take them out. Now, we have research done that, going into a site, where the sight lines are wrong and the hedges are either taken out, the hedges can be moved back. If you take the hedge, no matter how old, if you dig a trench where you're going to reuse where you need it, I'll stand here. Do you want to take down the lights just a little bit? Now this is the procedure. This is the hinge. You lay in only one direction. Now I can't identify who that is now. It's going too fast. But no, that is really what hedge laying is. It's the coppicing off. Now this piece here that's cut off, that's what they call the heel. That would be sticking up where the stem was. That should be cut off, which it is cut off. It's a one Donnelly. Yeah, he's a guy from Waterford. Now the south of England style. This is just a different style depending on what livestock you have. Oh yeah.
Oh, there we
go. Very good.
This is just a minute as well.
Now this is our display trailer at our. Now this is actually this time last year. That's myself. This time last year at home. Now that's a hedge, about 18-year-old. Now, you see the cut has been made here. That's the staking. That's the hinge. That's just pruning off what's not needed. That's cutting off the heel. Most important cut that has gone into it. That's binding. That's staking binding. Now that's another piece that's been laid, and just the heel again. Now that's hedge. That's a bit of vintage we had that day as well. Now I'm going to tell you a very, we had just a vintage show on that day. We do try and have a bit of everything to do with the hedgerows. That's a beekeeper from just outside Kilbeggan. Now Pippa Hackett is there as well. That's Pippa Hackett, whether you're involved in greenery or not. That's the site itself.
Sorry, I'll put this one on again so that you can see it with the lights off.
Now every hedge laying style is the same. It's the same basic cut at the base of the stem.
And you're saying it's 80% of the way through the base of the stem?
It's about 80%. It's about 80%. But that's why you have to pair it with the axe to get the hinge flexible enough to bend over. Now, what a lot of people don't understand, every piece that's laid there is alive, because you have that, the cambium layer is not broken, the bark is still intact, and the minimum amount of white timber is left. So now that hedge, when that gets 1 year growth, that is literally, nothing will get through it. I done my assessment in the Ag College in Mount Bellew, and brother Tom, this is a good while ago now, was looking after the lambs, and he had a whole lot of spring lambs that was born, that was let out, and he said the fox, some guys was shooting these foxes, and the fox came in the gate, and he went round the field, and he had to go back out the gate again. He couldn't get out to the hedge. And that is literally, you have regrowth, especially from the base here, you have vertical regrowth. Every piece of that is growing, every piece is alive. There's no gaps in it, absolutely no gaps. Now that's south of England, that's slightly higher. The hedgerow is finished maybe at 5 to 6 foot. Now in the west, or anybody with sheep, dim stems are laid almost horizontal, and you're tightly packing them down. The procedure is the very, very same. That's just a different style. There's a whole lot of styles like that, you know. So that is the, that is the...
If my memory serves me from the other video as well, he was saying that you lay it uphill. And what would be the purpose of laying, so you're pushing them down so that they're going, following the hill? Yeah, it's the fact of the stem being turned. You know, the more the stem faces up, the faster the sap will rise in it. So if you have, that's the problem with breaking them down with a digger. You know, they're everywhere. You know, they could break off at 5 foot and they're still going down to the ground there, but that stem is dead. You know, so it's this work with the digger is just not on, and that's it. You know, so that's about. I don't think I have any more questions. There's a few more questions about, yeah.
And just a general observation more than anything else. A very well presented presentation on hedge laying and the importance of it involved in tidy villages. But I suppose from a visual point of view, that we're gone to a very tidy towns and tidy villages up and down the country doing amazing works or whatever. Is there an overspill into the countryside of having this perfect tidy countryside, and that we are now looking at, say, cutting down your hedges or whatever, clean lines and well presented? Like, is there a need for that overspill into the hedges and the boundaries inside the road line, if you know me?
Yeah.
Have we gone too far off this image of tidiness, if you know what I mean? Like, well, nature is wild, and it should be left wild, within reason.
Well, that is true,
So the question is there too much of an emphasis on tidy countryside?
Yeah, well, that is true. But the only thing about that is, the hedges in Ireland is number one for a farmer, and whatever amount of farmers is here, for me, as a farmer, my hedge has to be stockproof. Number one. Now, if you have a stockproof hedge, that means you have no gaps in it. All these guys are going to go in it. You have no gaps this size, the cattle walking in and out through it. So straight away, you're laying your hedge, you're bringing the biodiversity back into it, you're bringing the wildlife. Everything is going to nest, everything is going to live, you know. But it's laid in such a way that it's stockproof, number one, and the rest just follows on from that. Now, the disadvantage with hedge laying is the stems that's been showed here, they will never be seen again. You know, that amount of work, because there's that much regrowth out of them. It's like, I have hedges at home that in the winter time of the year, you can't see through them. You can't, if you go down to a hedge that's laid, you literally can't see through it. It's that thick and it's that dense. It's a pure dense, you know, factor on your farm or image on your farm, you know. Now, it is gone, as you were saying, it is gone a little bit aesthetic looking, you know, that they should all be, you know, within reason, yeah, within reason. But it's the basic structure of the hedge and what it should do when it's stock proof. That's the number one. Everything else follows after that, you know. Everything comes back into it as a result, you know. So it's now the tidy towns. There was a question asked there. I done a short hedge laying job in our local village in Tubber. I only looked at it here the other day. It's an aspect in tidy towns that carries a lot of marks, you know. So now I'm not sure about the rules and regulations. It's, you know, it changes quite a lot. But that was one of the aspects of tidy towns, that it gains a lot of marks. But on the other hand, unless you're somebody that knows what hedge laying is about, you don't know what hedge laying is about. So if you get your super value guy that comes out and looks at it, he doesn't know how to hedge. He doesn't know what a hedge is, number one. He doesn't know what hedge laying is, number two. So, you know, it's a bit of a, you know, it's a bit of a quem or whatever, you know. So that's the...
Yeah, one over here and then one back here as well.
Eamonn, that's great talk. I suppose that hedgerow I showed that disappeared in our town, we had engaged and we had Owen Donnelly arranged and agreed, and our idea was to... So we approached the developer because it had been one of these strategic housing developments and it had already gone through, but we approached the developer and asked, could we work together and could we engage somebody and to come over and walk about? And, you know, I was pretty sure the hedge could be laid, and then we said in return, as sort of part of the non-tidy town section of the tidy towns, you know, that we would profile that and we would send it and we would use it as an example to send out in terms of educating the developers and sort of really giving it a high profile, because we have a network around the county. What we actually found in the end was that because it bordered another housing estate, it was the people in the housing estate didn't know what we meant.
Right.
And they wanted the hedge gone.
Yeah, that is true.
And the developer sort of played on that.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
And he made an agreement, even though he had made an agreement and, you know, we had agreed price and all to get Owen to come in to lay the hedge.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I was just thinking in terms of what you were saying about school children, and I think that might be the only way, because again, I was talking to farmers last week, and I know like it's in the Acres programme, but sort of the comment was actually made, who cares?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's no longer necessary to have a hedge, you know, that a hedge is stock proof because you've post and wire fencing, and that's basically what, you know, or the electric fence, you know. And so if a program could be developed around the schools, to all the schools, and if you're training young people, that could then go out and train young people and get paid for it.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. Yeah, that is true. That's
and
major,
get it to every school in the country at, you know, at you know, whatever it is, something they could do in transition year.
Yeah, yeah.
And as you said, you know, and I know, they'll absolutely love it if they go out and do it.
Yeah, they will. Oh, absolutely. And I was saying there as well that, you know, the 5th and 6th class, this is such a day of entertainment, such a day of fun, you know, such a day of fun that we have. But the message was got out, you know, and it's the same, you know, the kids They don't, unless they look it up. And that's another problem. See, everything is on screen. You know, the acres is on a screen. You pick out your hedgerow from the laptop. You don't do that. You cannot pick out a suitable hedge layer. Now, when I'm good friends with my local planner himself, and I do get out and do demonstration and try and talk to these farmers. But on a screen, a hedgerow is a hedgerow. It's suitable or not only by walking it. And you want to walk it and know what direction you're going to start to lay it, how many gaps is in it, you know, whether it's uphill or downhill, as Catherine said, you know, all these things have to be identified, but not on a screen. You know, that is the, but you're right about the schools. This is what we need to be, you know, getting in. And the same with transition and, you know, ag science and into the colleges as well. It used to be an aspect in your green cert. That's no longer. You know, things has changed. Things, unfortunately, has changed. And then, you know, well, we find, the insurance, we thought insurance would be huge, you know, for some beginner now to take an axe in their hand or a double-edged bill hook, you know, and start swinging it around. But if you have anybody responsible and show them, you know, how to do it right, it's not a problem, you know, it's not a problem. So it's you know, it can be done, but we just need, but our problem is, and I don't know whether there's any department people here or not, you know, our department don't know what, number one, they don't know what a hedge is, as you know, and number two, they don't know what hedge laying is. They don't know what species is in it. They don't know what it creates or supports. So, you know, unless you start there as well, you can't, you know, you're at a stone wall straight away, you know. So.
I suppose the other thing is this idea of these hedges, you know, with, you know, and now the advice is being given out that they should all be like thorn trees that are, you know, and it's this standard, it's like one size fits all.
Yeah.
I suppose what's really, the people don't know that, you know, the importance of the different hedgerows.
Yeah.
You said you had obviously a very diverse.
Yeah, there's 18, there's actually 19 species in that hedge. Yeah. There's 19 species. That's not counting, you know, we'll say all the flowers and stuff that grows on the yeah.
And you know, the importance of the townland hedgerows.
Yeah, that is true.
And I suppose if I had gotten to it on my slides, I what can I do? You know, how you can look that up.
Yeah. Yeah, you can. Well, the All Ireland Survey, now I live in a place called Tinnymuck. It's an Irish, but we have east, west and north. And that defines the boundaries between by a hedgerow, you know. Now it's an old, very, very old hedgerow. It doesn't, see, it goes back to my point. There was no mini diggers back then. There was no, you know, there was no diggers. You just didn't plant a straight hedge. You went round what was there. It goes round at the back of the mast rock. East is here, west is here. It went round there. It was planted, I don't know how long ago it was planted, you know. It's colossal. Now it needs to be laid as well, you know. And just going back to acres, you mentioned acres, the new environmental scheme. What I've done in the environmental scheme is wrong. You have to have all your hedge laying done within, you go in January, so you've only 2 months of the first year, you have 6 months in the next year, and that's the end of it. So you have to have your hedge laying done in the first 2 years of a 5-year plan. Now that is not possible. That is number one, that is wrong. You know, now there's generally the cycle of a hedgerow. A properly laid hedgerow gives a life of 30 to 40 years. So within that, now I'm going back on some of mine that I done 20 years ago that needs to be done again.
That was kind of another question I had, Eamonn. Is there a book that describes what would have happened traditionally in Ireland and exactly that point? You know, I know from listening to my father talking about how certain portions might have been laid at different, so it was rotational.
Yes, that is true. That is true. But it also goes back to the reason why hedge laying was hedge laying. You couldn't buy stakes, you couldn't buy wire. If you had a cow breaking out, you had to lay into the gap that she broke out in. That was it. But you could lay all year round, now, which was a bit of a disadvantage, you know, but it was a purposeful stock management. You had to keep your stock in your own fields. You know.
Yeah. It just strikes me that a simple booklet or something describing that, because I'm hugely conscious of, you know, there's a lot of people coming out now of college doing environmental work, or, you know, getting in on the ecology of all of these schemes that are now being promoted. They actually have very little knowledge. And,
that's exactly it.
So from the point of view of hedges and your knowledge of hedges and the group, it would be terrific if older management methods, you know, not just the actual how you physically lay the hedge, but how hedgerows would have been, and also incorporating, you know, the different hedgerows. I mean, you'll have different hedgerows depending on the underlying soils.
Correct.
You know, and moisture, and again, in the one size fits all, you know, Chagas booklets, etc., it's, oh, you must have a diverse hedgerow, you know, 1 minute, and then the next minute is you must have like just flowering thorn, you know, hawthorn species.
No,
You
that
know,
is
or
true. That
hawthorn,
is absolutely true. But just
and
one,
they've raised it now from the 1.5 meters. I think it's up to 2.5.
2.5, yeah,
meters.
that's true. Yeah.
And the sloping, the A-cut, they're hedges. They are hedges, because you know it's and you know the disease introducing of this continuous, and it's so it would be really helpful. I think, Eamon, another sort of thing would be, you know, just a bite-sized booklet, because unfortunately people haven't got the capacity to sit down anymore.
That is true.
You know.
Now, another major problem there now, I should have mentioned as well, you know, people that you know, re-sow hedgerows, right? You get five per metre, a foot apart and 2 foot staggered. So with every linear metre, you have to put in 5, you know, generally whitethorn, blackthorn, hollies, the 3 main groups, but you can interchange them as well. But if the whitethorn comes in from Holland, whitethorn has a different climate, it comes into flower and comes into leaf, and if you have a late frost in Ireland, in the month of April, your whitethorn is knocked back or dead. Do you know? Now that's not rocket science to anybody, do you know? It's not rocket science to anybody. And it's not, we try and tell people at the ploughing match, this is what should be done. And when you go to your local guy, he doesn't know where they come from. He supplies from some other, you know, like a Musgraves or somebody else that, you know, brings them in and sells them. You know.
Okay, so we have 3 more questions lined up, and then I think that's all we're going to get to, because we're actually just hit 3 o'clock, just about. So I'll pass around to the 3 that have.
I'm kind of asking a question from the point of view of a townie, and if you consider nowadays most of the population is kind of urban or suburban, and even within rural areas, there's not that many people directly involved in agriculture. People are kind of commuting to 9-to-5 office jobs. So what I'm asking about is, you know, subsidies and lack of subsidies and different schemes, and the average person in town might have heard of reps and reps 1, and they might be, I don't know if they're still the case or they were years ago. But is it true that a lot of hedges around the edges of fields are getting cleared so that farmers can claim the arable acreage subsidy? And just wondering, is that true, and is that still the case? And then if there's other schemes where they might be getting subsidised to maintain hedges, are they kind of voluntary or opt-in or opt-out, or is there any kind of quick answer that a suburban taxpayer might kind of understand, you know, the next time you're talking to your TD or something like that? Because it seems to be kind of, on one hand, kind of simple when you see what's going on physically, but then the bureaucracy and the financial reasons behind it can be kind of complicated. So is there any kind of short way to summarise that?
Yeah, well, the only thing I'd say to that is removal of hedgerows is, see how removal of hedgerow is identified is, you get your satellite shot every year for your area-based payment, your area aid, right? And on it, if you remove the hedgerow, there's a red line on it. Now you're not told that the hedgerow is gone, your money is stopped on you, a percentage, you could lose 100%. I lately put back in 8,000 whitethorns to replace Now, it wasn't a hedgerow, it was marked down in the 1901 survey, it was a hedgerow, and he took it out. So that's the only advantage to that now. Now, in the new scheme of things, that if you remove a metre, you have to plant back 2. So that's a disincentive straight away, which is nearly time it was brought in. So people will think twice before, before they remove it. Now, that's the standard farmer. That's the standard, I'm a small farmer. But then when you get up to the like of the equestrian guy there, now this farmer lost €8,000. If I lost €8,000, I'd be broke. But him is only the sale of, well, I don't know what it is. It's not very much money in that respect. See, this is what's wrong with the whole system. There's a kind of a paintbrush over it all, and it doesn't apply to everybody. And even the bigger dairy farmers now, they're not even drawing their single farm payment. They're doing what they like. So, unfortunately. And I can see your point from an urban, like you're a taxpayer, and this is where a lot of your money is going. But there will be, like in the EU and the tightening up of everything, every bit of money that's going back into agriculture will have to be accounted for. Like we go back here and ask, in the previous last scheme, there was kilometres of hedgerows built, planted, we'll say 10, maybe 20 years ago. Ideal training hedges. We can't find one. We can't find one because the money was paid, the box was ticked, you took up your electric fence, you let your cattle go through it, the hedgerow is gone. It's awful. It's awful to have to say that, but that is the case of it, And I can see from where you're, just one other thing from an urban dweller, security. If you have a whitethorn hedge laid, you don't need no CCTV. Nobody will get into it. Nobody will get through it, and nobody will get over it. Now that's the urban way of looking at a good laid whitethorn hedge or whatever, So.
Hey, we've got one more over here, and then one final comment as well.
Hello, Eamonn. I wondered about your experience of working with hedges that have been coppiced on previous agricultural schemes and the continuity of, so the money's gone out through REPS or GLOS or AOS. So we have a farm, so we would have coppiced quite an area, and I wondered how much continuity, so we would have coppiced because they were gone beyond laying. Yes. So how much continuity are you getting? So those hedges should have come back into being ready for hedge laying, and there should be sort of almost a compulsion that they should be managed in a particular way because they have been coppiced. But there isn't a follow-on from one scheme to the next.
There's not. No.
What happens to that hedge?
Yeah, no. Well, very good question, I must say. Excellent question. A coppiced hedge, if it's not cut again, is an ideal hedge to lay. You know the procedure of coppicing. If you take out a stem that size, you'll have a ring of regrowth on it. You'll have regrowth from right around the outside, and you have no disease in it. What you have coppiced out, generally there's disease or something has happened to it. It's grew up too tall. But on a coppiced hedge is ideal hedge to put in for hedge laying. It's ideal. You have regrowth, fresh stems, no disease. You can pick out 3 or 4 of the multitude of stems all around or regrowths, and you're away grey on laying. Ideal. Now it's ideal. But as you said, you're right. There's no continuity between schemes, of one from the other. Unfortunately, that is the way it is. So it's good in that way.
Okay, so we have one final comment to finish on. No pressure.
No, it's just a comment. I was reminded of how culturally important the hedgerows were last weekend when I was at the foot of the hill of Tara, and there was the puck fodder going on.
Oh, yes.
And they told me they started off in the killing field. I said, why is it called that? Well, they said, we think some of the 98 men were hung up here. But I could tell that the first hedge they were going over was a townland boundary hedge. And it reminded me of the old Celtic way of walking around the edge of your territory, if you like, marking it. And you had to put the puck over several large trees that were in the different hedges. And you weren't allowed to put the puck into the hedge or you were eliminated.
Yeah.
But they were going to cross every hedge, and they had got permission the night before from all the farmers. Between them and the local parish church in Kilmessan, that was about a mile away.
Oh yeah, I know it well, yeah.
Yeah.
I do actually, yeah.
And I just reflected on how important hedges are in Ireland,
absolutely,
apart from their actual vegetation itself.
Yeah, absolutely true, yeah, that is true. Majorly important. And every hedge has a story to it, and it reflects. The old saying is, if you go to buy a farm and you look at the hedge left or right of the gate, and if it's a good whitethorn hedge, you don't walk the farm, you just buy the land. It reflects the soil that's in the ground, and all you have to do is look around and see this is the farm to buy. It's a fertile farm. It reflects on what sort of hedgerows is on the ground. And I've heard that story so many times, you know. So it's reflective of the type of hedgerow and how good they are, whether you buy the land or not.
Fantastic. We actually had one final question just from the internet.
There's a small question there from the internet from Ruth Murphy. What species would be best for a laid hedge on a small allotment?
Anything with thorn in it, either whitethorn, blackthorn or holly, readily available. Just make sure that what you buy is of Irish provenance. It's not imported. That's about it.
Good stuff, fantastic. Thank you so much. Cheers.
Now, that's all right. Guys, can I just say one more thing? I'm sorry, you won't get rid of me. Hedgelaying.ie, HLAI.ie, scroll down, you'll find my number, looking for a hedge layer. I'm Eamonn McLoughlin. Any query, any question, just give me a call and I'll be able to, well, I'll do my best to answer it or whatever.